Okay, I'm going to invite everyone to join me in putting our palms together, and I'm going to advance the slide. So, Tan, when you're ready, you may begin.
恭敬大德圣听，为师发挥，济一切众生，金装妙法，论教导我们如何了生脱死。离苦得乐，足证无生。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchetoye alahati san miao san puto che. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, and all good knowing advisors, welcome to this week's exploration of the Medicine Master Buddha Sutra. And as usual, we'll begin with chanting Medicine Master Buddha's name 7 times. Namo, quelling disasters, lending life. Medicine Master Buddha 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 Namo, quelling disasters, lending life. Medicine Master Buddha, Medicine Master does come one. 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 Hello, everyone. Good morning and good evening, depending on where you are. Today, we are going to continue our exploration of the Medicine Master Buddha Sutra, and we will still look at it from the perspective of, from the topic of precepts. And to do that, let me um, change the slide for today to today's slide. Okay, precepts. So before we begin today, Tan had a question about um, joining a different group that is studying for two reasons. One is to study the Heart Sutra, and the other one is to improve her Vietnamese. And her question was, is there um, she feels very loyal to Shifu. So is she doing? Is there anything? I think the correct way to rephrase her question would be, is there anything to be aware of? Okay, so Tan, I want you to pay when we get to the part on right view and wrong view. I would like you to pay especially close attention. um, Usually questions we how you say without right view, what is, we're going to talk about right view today, so I'm going to give a quick primer on what we're going to what I'm going to share. Usually the Buddhists that have come across who are very afraid of different monasteries outside of DRBA, monastics from different traditions, um, like say the Tibetan tradition, and I'm only talking about the people I've met through DRBA, okay? And so when they meet monastics, like say from the Theravada tradition, from different monasteries, even if they are like Mahayana monks and nuns, they have this fear. Sometimes they encourage people, or they tell people not to go to different monasteries or not to go to different places for um, Dharma talks and all that. And there's very good reason behind it, because there are always people looking to, how you say, wayward people or teachers. They are, um, they use the Dharma to exploit people. So Shufu gives us some guidelines on how do we spot a good knowing advisor. Shufu says, look at them. Are they greedy? Do they break the precepts? Are they do they hunger for fame? Do they want to be famous? You know, Shufu gives us those guidelines. Another thing that we can do, if we follow the Buddha's advice, is we have to understand the Dharma too, because every one of those people that I've met who have this fear, their relationship with the Dharma, based on where they are right now, is based not on understanding, but on they just accept whatever they hear in the Dharma from from our DRBA circle. Anything Shufu says is correct, and there's nothing wrong with that. But they don't try to think about what Shufu says, and uh, or what Shufu is trying to mean, or what Shufu says, is it applicable to them at that particular life? They just accept it without question. So an approach that's based more on faith, like FAITH, the word faith, a belief without questioning. Um, I People like that are usually very afraid of other Buddhists or other uh, non-DRBA places. But people who actually study, who think and ponder over the Dharma, who understand what the Buddha taught, because they actually go back to the sutras, they don't really have this fear, because when they hear something that's not quite right, they know, they can tell. They've developed that kind of uh, mundane wisdom to be able to tell. So that's why. So that's one of the benefits of having right view or right understanding. It gives us the confidence when we study the Dharma to know what's right and what's wrong. Okay, so quick, what we call it, sneak preview over. Let's go back to the precepts. And today we are going to explore the relationship between precepts and the Noble Eightfold Path. And let's see what Shufu has to say about this. Okay, so Shufu has a question. If you look at the screen, someone asked Shufu, what's most important for Buddhists? And Shufu's reply, the most important thing for Buddhists is to observe the five precepts, which is what we are concentrating on in these few classes, the five precepts. And Shufu says which the five precepts are of immense importance. They are the basics of being a human and also the staircase to the heavens. People who follow the five precepts will never lose their human form. So we talked about this in the last two last two classes, um, where the five precepts is seen as planting. The five precepts are the causes for planting a future condition where you come back as a human, at the very least. Yeah, Shufu says they are also the staircase to the heavens. Um, so if you do it really well and you do a bit more than the five precepts, uh, they say that if you have the five precepts and the 10 good deeds, then that's the staircase to the heavens. And Shufu also says, in terms of the Noble Eightfold Path, it covers right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Okay, so we'll come back to this in a few slides, within a few slides. Okay, for now, let's just go on to get an overview of the Noble Eightfold Path. Why we talking about the Noble Eightfold Path? Well, because Shufu already linked the five precepts with the path, and also because it is the very first in the Theravada canon of suttas. It is the very first sutra the Buddha spoke, okay, which is this. It's called the Discourse on Setting in Motion the Wheel of the Dharma, if we use the Pali pronunciation. And this discourse or this sutra is the very first sutra that the Buddha spoke. Okay, so how does it go? It's not a very long sutra. Um, and what we have here is a shorter version. So I'm going to put my palms together when I read this. It says, when the Blessed One was staying in the deer sanctuary at Isipatana near Benares, he spoke to the group of five bhikkhus. Okay, so who are these five bhikkhus? These five bhikkhus are actually were the Buddha's companion before he became the Buddha. So the Buddha was as the prince, okay, as the mendicant prince before he became the Buddha. He explored all the different ways that one could practice. He had already experienced life full of pleasures as a prince, and he realized that wasn't getting him anywhere. And then he went into, then he studied, then he left the palace, he studied meditation, and he went into the deepest levels of samadhi. He actually conquered the eight dhyanas. We commonly know the four dhyanas, but there's also four after that. And he also realized that wasn't getting him anywhere, because although the four levels, the upper four levels of dhyana was very deep concentration, when when he was not meditating, all the problems came back. He didn't solve any problems that led to the end of suffering, the end of rebirth. So he not abandoned that path. Then he decided to look for another path. Then he went through. Um, uh, he subjected himself to his body. He subjected his body to a lot of physical endeavors, because he thought that the answer might lie in through the body, the ending of suffering through the body. And then he realized that, oh, that's wrong. That he, because he almost died. He did it to the point where if he had carried on, he would have definitely died. And if you have seen images of the Buddha where he looks more like a skeleton than a human being, that's the context of the story behind those images. And he realized that wasn't the way, through the body, through mortification of the body, subjecting the body through all different forms of stress. Then he said it has to be through the mind. And at that point, he accepted some rice porridge from a girl. He took a bath in the river and then came out and he accepted some rice porridge from a girl. I think the sutta said that this was not an ordinary girl, but a deva that appeared in girl form. And when he accepted this porridge, his 5 companions abandoned him. They said, "Oh, this person is too soft. He has abandoned. He has left the path." So the Buddha, the prince, then having accepted the rice porridge and being able to, his body became stronger, which enabled him to meditate, but this time not shut down the mind, but to use the mind as the key to ending birth and death. When he succeeded, um, these 5 companions of his were the first people he actually visited to save them. And the result of his visit is this sutta called the Discourse on Setting in Motion the Wheel of the Dharma. So that's the background to what we're going to read. Okay, so the Buddha is saying, these 2 extremes, bhikkhus, should not be followed by one who has gone forth. Sensual indulgence, which is low, coarse, vulgar, ignoble, and unprofitable, and self-torture, which is painful, ignoble, and unprofitable. So the Buddha is speaking from experience, but he's also speaking to the experience of these 5 bhikkhus um, who are undergoing, how you say, a very austere lifestyle right now. Okay. So next slide, the Buddha says, because by avoiding these 2 extremes, the Tathagata has realized the middle way, which gives vision and understanding, which leads to calm, penetration, enlightenment, to Nibbana. And what bhikkhus is the middle way realized by the Tathagata, which gives vision and understanding, which leads to calm, penetration, enlightenment, to Nibbana. Buddha continues, he says, it is just this noble eightfold path, namely right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So before this, no one had in the world had ever heard what was the Noble Eightfold Path. This concept or this approach didn't exist until this time when the Buddha actually said it. Buddha says, truly because this middle way understood by the Tathagata produces vision, produces knowledge, and leads to calm, penetration, enlightenment, to Nibbana. Okay. Then, now when the Blessed One set in motion the wheel of truth, the Bhumata Devas, or the earth gods or deities, proclaim the matchless wheel of truth that cannot be set in motion by recluse, Brahmana, Deva, Mara, Brahma, or anyone in the world, is set in motion by the Blessed One in the deer park at Isipatana near Varanasi. So what it means is that this profound teaching by the Buddha, even um, no one else would have been able to teach this, because they wouldn't know from any recluse, meaning people who devote themselves to a spiritual life, any gods, right up to even Lord Brahma, would not have been able to provide this kind of teaching. Okay, then next slide. And then thus at that very moment, at that instant, the cry spread as far as the Burma realm. The system of 10,000 worlds trembled and quaked and shook. A boundless, sublime radiance surpassing the effulgence of devas appeared in the world. Then the Blessed One uttered this paean of joy. Verily, Kondana has realized. Verily, Kondana has realized the Four Noble Truths. Thus it was that the Venerable Kondana received the name Anna Kondana, Kondana who realizes. So this is not the whole, I didn't share the whole sutra, that will take a bit more time. But Within this sutra, the Buddha also spoke about the Four Noble Truths. Actually, he spoke about the Four Noble Truths first, and then he linked the Fourth Noble Truth to the Noble Eightfold Path, because the Fourth Noble Truth says that there is a way to end suffering. And what is the way? The Noble Eightfold Path. And Venerable Kondana was the first of the Buddha's disciples to become an arhat. So for all monastics, he's like our like biggest brother, kind of like the eldest brother. Okay, so let's take a look at the Noble Eightfold Path in slightly more detail. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Okay, so the Buddha calls this the middle way. We've known that in the sutra that we just read. The Buddha says this is the middle way, but it's not the middle way because it combines both. Okay, you know what I mean? You some people say, oh, they justify doing something stupid like drinking alcohol. They say, oh, the middle way is you don't drink too much, but you don't totally abstain. So the middle way is you drink just enough. They they misunderstand what the middle way means when the Buddha said the middle way. So the middle way is not a combination of the two extremes. Okay, and we'll look into what the two extremes are again. But it's called the middle way because it avoids all the pitfalls of the two extremes. Okay, it steers clear of the two extremes, so that you are walking the right path to ending suffering. Okay, so what are the two extremes? Well, the first one is the extreme indulgence in sense pleasures. So what does this mean? This means what most of us are doing right now. Everyone in this world, we are trying to how you say, all of us have this let me say it right, dissatisfaction in our lives. That means we're not really satisfied. That's one of the realities of life. We are never satisfied. So what do we try to do? We try to overcome that dissatisfaction. We try to look for satisfaction through indulging ourselves in indulging our desires in sense pleasures. Okay, so the Buddha says that this approach may give you pleasure. Okay, usually very short-term pleasure, but he says that this kind of enjoyment is gross. It's not fine. What's gross and fine? Let's look at food. Okay, they say that heavenly food is very refined. The taste, the smells, the look of heavenly food is very, very different from human food. I think if you were to compare, not that I have any experience with heavenly food, I just know some of the stories. But if you were to compare heavenly food to human food, I think it would make human food look like what they feed animals. Something like that. Something that you wouldn't, it would make our food look like something you don't want to eat. That is the difference between heavenly food and human food. And I think I read somewhere before that heavenly food is so I don't know, heavenly, that one meal, if you eat heavenly food once, it can last you for a very long time, few weeks. I don't know exactly, um, but it lasts you for a very long time. If anyone knows, just type it in the chat box if you've heard that before. So that's one. Um, so what are we comparing our worldly pleasures to when the Buddha says it is gross? the bliss of dhyana. So everything that we can find pleasure in this world, anything at all, it can be, if you are a multi-billionaire, what could it be? It could be the latest jet, the biggest jet that you can afford, and which takes years to they make an interior exactly the way you want it, or you buy the biggest yacht in the world, or whatever it is that money can afford, is nothing compared to the bliss of dhyana. That means when you sit in meditation, even the first dhyana itself, the comfort, the ease, um, the bliss, the happiness that you get is so refined that immediately you see everything else in the world as you it just doesn't compare. Yeah. So some people look at monastics, especially those who meditate, and they say, "Oh, monastics have such a difficult life." Well, for those monastics who have actually experienced the bliss of dhyana, they would, they just smile and shake their heads and say, "Well, you actually don't know what you're saying." Yeah. Um, and first dhyana, all of us can get there with the right approach, with the approach based on precepts, wisdom, and samadhi, which we are looking at right now in the Noble Eightfold Path. The door is open to all of us. All right. Okay. What else does the Buddha say about the pleasures, the worldly pleasures that we get? The Buddha says it is impermanent. It doesn't last. It's transitory. What doesn't last? Well, or unreliable. I've used this example before. Think of a car that is unreliable. Okay. Say you have to go on a trip. You have to go somewhere. Either you have to drive from LA or San Francisco to city of 10,000 Buddhas, or you want to come to the monastery at Tenpian, or you want to drive to GCDR in Australia. And you have this car. And this car is really unreliable. Sometimes when you press on the brake pedal, nothing happens. You know, one out of three times when you press, nothing happens. So it makes you really afraid. And then sometimes when you drive, you turn the steering wheel, you turn right, nothing happens. The car keeps on going straight. And even sometimes when you hold the steering wheel can come off. So you have a car like this. Okay, so when you brake, the seat moves. You accelerate, the seat moves back. You can't press the pedal anymore. When you brake, the seat moves forward and you bang into the steering wheel. You have a car like that. How safe and comfortable would you feel in such a car? Anyone in their right minds would never drive or be in such a car, right? No one. But if we observe what human beings do in our everyday lives, that's actually what we do. We try to look for safety and for and satisfaction and comfort in things that are not permanent. So things that are not permanent by that very logic or nature means that the satisfaction we get from it is not permanent either. Like our body is going to fail us one day, but every single person, maybe not every single person, but more than 99% of people in the world try to seek refuge through their body, all the while knowing that the body will fail them, but they either they do not realize that fact or they push that away. Okay. Um, Another thing the Buddha says about our worldly pleasure is that it is devoid of deep contentment, meaning the satisfaction doesn't go very deep, doesn't go very long. Okay. Not only that, our worldly pleasures makes us more attached. It creates more desires for them. So the more you get, because it is not the satisfaction is not lasting, the more you want. It's like a drug. Okay. And not only that, But uh, sorry, an attachment to pleasure creates a very strong aversion to discomfort. So I think it is more accurate to say that for human beings, we spend more of our lives escaping from discomfort than actually achieving comfort. Okay, I'm going to say that again. We as human beings spend more time and effort in our lives just trying to escape from discomfort, from stress, from pain, whether it is physical or emotional. And it doesn't have to be sharp, acute pain. It is that discomfort that you have right now when you're sitting too long and you feel the need to move. It is the discomfort that you might have a itch that you want to scratch. The discomfort that if you're standing right now, you can't stand for too long and you need to move. The urge to buy a new sofa, to buy a new blanket, or to invest in a new mattress, new shoes. We are always looking to add more comfort or remove discomfort from our lives. And our lives actually revolve around that. It revolves so much around that that we don't even realize what we're doing. It becomes automatic. It becomes a way of life. It controls how we are. Yeah. So we spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money, and we along this journey to reduce our stress, we incur more stress without realizing it, which is really weird. Okay. So that's one of the first extremes that the middle way steers clear of. This looking for a solution to suffering through worldly pleasures. Okay, so what are worldly pleasures again? Physical things, emotional like relationships, uh, possessions, ego, fame, status, things like that. Okay, okay. What is the second extreme? We already talked about the Buddha's experience as he left the palace. The other extreme is the practice of self mortification, thinking that subjecting the body to all sorts of physical um, uh, pain or endeavors is a way to gain liberation. So that when the Buddha says this, he knows exactly what he's speaking about because at that time in India, there were people lying on bed of nails, standing on one leg, people who didn't bathe, they just spread ashes all over their body, people who didn't wear clothes, people who live like cows, um, people who were buried up to their necks in the ground. What else? People who didn't really eat, who fasted to extremes, people who bathe frequently. The Buddha gave a long list of all these people who were looking for a way out of suffering or a way where to achieve their goals. Some of them thought it would be born at, say, Brahma's feet or something through all these practices. And some of these practices still exist to this day. So this approach mistakenly takes the body instead of the mind as the cause for our suffering. So it totally misidentifies, or it doesn't know that the cause of our suffering lies in the mind. And so they try to find a way through the body instead. So this approach does not address the roots of our greed, of our ignorance, and our aversion or hatred, the three poisons. On the surface, it might seem like that. The person might seem to, like say, not want to wear clothes because they don't want to seem greedy, not accept money, for example, or they don't use money. They rely only on the generosity of others. So on the surface, it might seem like they are reducing their greed, but actually, this approach does not address the roots of greed which lies in the mind. So it doesn't work. Yeah. All right. I hope people can appreciate that distinction. Okay, so there's a commentary that says that to rid the mind of our defilements, the three poisons, the affliction of the body is not only useless but self-defeating, because the body itself is a necessary instrument for the mind. So what does that mean? It means that if you want to be able to meditate well, you need a body which is fairly healthy. If your body is sick, and anyone here who has fallen sick and still tried to meditate or recite the Buddha's name will know how difficult that is. I know because recently when I experienced chikungunya and had a very high fever, I could see myself being very, very confused. And I wasn't able to recite. Yeah, all I know is that I was caught in a mental loop of confusion. I knew what was going on. I could observe what was going on, but I couldn't do anything about it. Yeah, it's very, very funny. I'm not really sure how to explain uh, what I experienced. Yeah. So, so this is the second extreme that the Buddha says that we should avoid. So again, it is the middle way, not because it compromises the two extremes, but it is the middle way because it avoids the mistakes of these two extremes. So we should have a healthy body, but we should not indulge our body. There's a huge difference. So this lies in the practice of monastics. We don't do stupid things to ourselves that causes the body to suffer unnecessarily. Um, um, we don't, at the same time, we don't, as well as we do not neglect the body, we have, we know we need sufficient health, but we don't, for example, turn that into a something like, oh, I have to eat nutritious food every day. No, it is, if I have food to eat today, good, I will eat enough to cure my hunger, but that's it. You don't eat more to satisfy your sense pleasures, for example. All right. Okay, it is 9:40. Um, let me see. Let's go through the next few slides, and then I know I have a story to to continue. Okay, let's go to. Okay, so how does precepts and the Noble Eightfold Path connect? Okay, the Buddha already explained, and Shufu also talked about it. Precepts have to do with right speech, right action, right livelihood. Okay, so you all know the three. Let's move on to the next slide. You all know this saying, the three teachings or Trisiksa in Sanskrit, which always goes precept, samadhi, wisdom. So from precepts, meaning how you conduct yourself, your speech, your thoughts in daily life. From there, you develop the foundation to for samadhi or for concentration or for your uh, practice of meditation or reciting the Buddha's name in calming the mind. And then when the mind calms down sufficiently and you have enough concentration, arises wisdom. But if you look at the path, the slide in front of you, wisdom comes first, then precept, then samadhi. Why is that? It's not wrong, okay, because there's two kinds of wisdom that applies here. So the wisdom that comes first, which is right view and right intention, is transcendent. Sorry. So there are two kinds of wisdom. One wisdom is mundane wisdom, and the other wisdom is transcendental wisdom. Okay, what's mundane wisdom? Mundane wisdom is what we are doing right now. Okay, we exploring the sutra together. That's mundane wisdom. Mundane wisdom is our ability to understand the sutras according to our own levels. That's mundane wisdom. So listening to the Dharma, uh, reading, investigating, learning how to practice. What does the 5 precepts mean, which is the main goal of these few classes right now, is trying to understand the 5 precepts in a way that when we follow the 5 precepts, it fully accords with what the Buddha is teaching, and which include Shufu and all the other patriarchs. That's what we're trying to do right now. We're trying to investigate the 5 precepts by not just knowing what are the 5 precepts, but by understanding what the 5 precepts are meant to do and how to apply the 5 precepts with the right view and right intention, so that we are constantly on the path of that the Buddha wants us to walk. Okay. So this mundane wisdom that we are getting right now, understanding and knowledge, we apply as we hold and maintain the precepts in our practice. Okay. Then when we can do that well, it forms a foundation for our meditation or our mind calming exercises, like reciting the Buddha's name. Mind calming practices is more accurate. Yeah. Reciting the Buddha's name, sitting in meditation. So from precepts as the foundation, we lay as the foundation for a calm and quiet mind, which enables us to enter deep concentrations or samadhi. Then we end up with transcendental wisdom, which is the wisdom that comes from inside. And if you have read the Six Patriarch Sutra, what it gives an idea of what that wisdom is. Six Patriarch was illiterate. He did not have any formal education in the Dharma, meaning no one taught him the Dharma. He, at that point, when he was transmitted the robe and the bowl, he only had one teaching of the sutra from the fifth Petra. Before that, he had no formal teachings. That means he didn't listen to lectures or explore the sutras on his own. But yet, he could come up with a verse. When he heard a verse written by one of the other monks, he just knew that wasn't, the verse was not describing ultimate an ultimate awakening. And he came up with a verse that reflected that on the spot. So transcendental wisdom does not rely on external sources. It does not rely on this mind that we're using, this logical mind based on duality. It just comes from your Buddha nature. So that's transcendental wisdom. To get there, we need mundane wisdom, which is what we're doing right now. Okay, so mundane wisdom, you start with mundane wisdom, you apply the precepts, you learn how to calm your mind down because you lead a proper life, and then you enter concentration, then you end up with transcendental wisdom. Okay, so let me see, 9:47. Okay, let's go to story. Let's go to story right now. Before we go to the story, does anyone have any questions? Apart from Tan, anyone else have anything any experience, any stories, any questions? Questions do not need to be related to the sutra. It can be any questions relating to the Dharma.
Amitofo, Dharma Master.
Yes, Carrie.
Sharon here.
Oh, yeah, Sharon, sorry. Yes. Go ahead.
I would like to ask, what constitute slandering the Buddha? What does it mean by slandering the Buddha? Let's say someone is reciting some sutras or morning recitation aloud in a public place, but privately. And if someone passes by and say something, does it mean that person slanders the Buddha?
Okay, whenever we try to I wouldn't say use the word judge, but whenever we try to figure out what other people are doing, it's very hard because we have to look at the intentions or the mind of the person doing it. So say if someone, so in your situation, off the top of my mind, there might be different ways of looking at it. For example, this person who's doing their practice very quietly in a public place, and someone comes along and makes a not a very nice comment, they may not know what this person is doing. They may think that this person is crazy, talking to themselves, or whatever it is. So when they make a comment on that and not, so what I'm trying to do here is show you to try to guess the intention and then understand, to provide context for an imaginary intention, and then answer your question. So someone like that who doesn't know what this person is doing, and just maybe thinks that they're exhibiting a crazy behavior, I don't think it would classify as slandering the Dharma or the Buddha, because they don't know what's going on based on you saying this person is doing their practice very quietly. But if someone is fully aware that this person is doing a Buddhist practice, and in their mind they form the thought that, oh, it's related to the Dharma, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So imagine, say, like if they see a monastic and it is very clear that to this person that this is a Buddhist monk, and the monk is putting his palms together and doing something, it's very obvious that something is going on as a practice. And in this person's mind, he makes a not very nice comment, and it's very clear in himself that he's connecting it to the Buddha or the Dharma. Then something like that would be kind of like slandering the Buddha. But for regular people who don't really, it's hard to really understand without being able to see into the intentions and the minds of the other person. Yeah. So basically, don't jump to conclusions too quickly. Yeah. Does that help, Sharon?
Yes, it helps. It's just that I understand the part where the people don't understand and they have they do not know what we are doing. What I'm saying is the person who actually knows Buddhism but is telling me you cannot do it in public.
Oh, that's a different thing. The person, are you saying that the person who tells you not to do it in public is slandering the Dharma, the Buddha?
No. Basically, he's just worried that other people might slander the Buddha if they heard our chanting. So I was just telling the person that basically we are just doing it quietly. But all I'm trying to say is it started me to think, what does slandering the Buddha mean when we practice in our own way, and yet like for example, my sister, if I tell her something about Buddhism, she will be very upset and dismiss it, and she won't be happy whenever I say something about Buddhism. So I'm very scared to talk to her about Buddhism at all. So it's very hard for me to share with her anything, because I'm scared that she might say something and slander it.
Yes, that's actually a really good reason not to speak the Dharma to anyone unless it is requested in a very sincere way. So, which is why we have the request for Dharma, which is why the Buddha, when he became the Buddha, a Deva had to appear to request the Dharma on behalf of the entire Saha world, so that the Buddha would teach. Yeah, so when we speak Dharma, just like, anyone, even with well-meaning, with a well-meaning heart, with really, really good intentions, try to speak to us about their religion, which you don't follow, we don't like it. So in Buddhism, we do not try to speak Dharma to people who have not requested the Dharma from us. So your strategy is really good, Sharon. It's for your sister or sister-in-law. I don't remember what you said. Don't speak the Dharma. So what we do instead is we show the effect of the Dharma on us. And if our character, our virtue is sufficient enough, that means we are, how you say, if our example of what the Dharma means is good enough, then that will move people to have confidence in the Dharma and then want to know more. Why? Because we show that it works. So if someone wants to share something, say like, it doesn't have to be the Dharma, but say someone wants me to invest in something because you can get rich quickly, but this person himself is very poor, I'm not going to believe him, because he himself is not successful, but he's claiming that he can make me successful. No, you know, uh, you are not a proof of what a successful person is. So, I'm not going to believe you when you say you can make me successful. Same thing with the Dharma. Uh, the so the more confident we are, how you say, the happier we are, the less attachments we have, the less contentions we have, the less wrong views we have, the less rigid attachment to views that we have, then the more people will be interested in what we say. So that's one way of approaching the precepts, which is we cannot convert people through words, but only through our own actions. That's one. And this leads to a second point, which is usually for precepts, precepts if not held right, and we'll continue on the right way of looking at precepts. Actually, what Sharon asked has a lot to do with the next few slides that we're going to look at, not today, unfortunately, but next week, which is precepts you hold for yourself. You should not look at other people through the precepts that you hold, meaning you should not judge other people's behavior or character, but you just, so this is not directly related to Sharon's question, but it is related. Precepts are only for ourselves. You judge your own behavior, character through the precepts you hold, but not other people. So that's like one of the unsaid rules of holding the precepts. Yeah. So since we only have a few minutes left, the story will have to wait until next week. But we had very, very good reason for that. I will use the remaining time to address Tan's question. So Tan's question was, in her quest to learn more Vietnamese, and she found a Vietnamese group that was exploring the Diamond Sutra, a translation in Vietnamese. But this group is not a DRBA group, and the translation that they're using is not a BTTS or our not a DRBA BTTS translation. And she was just wondering what to make of this, since she is very faithful to Shufu. As I said before in the beginning, the more we understand the Dharma and the more our relationship with the Dharma is based on understanding and not blind faith, the more confident we will be. And the more confident we will be, then the less fears we will have with anyone. Okay, with anyone at all. Which is why interfaith activities are really, really important. If you, either as a layperson or as a monastic, represent the Dharma, and you are in a room full of people from different faiths, the only way you can feel comfortable and not feel threatened is through understanding your own faith very well. So Shufu introduces to interfaith, and when I was still in Berkeley Monastery, we participated in many interfaith activities, and I found that, at least in my experience, that someone who doesn't really understand their faith and just takes it on faith alone, which is FAI, both spelled as FAITH, someone like that gets threatened really, really quickly and easily. But if you understand what the practice is, you know how to apply the Buddha's teachings, you know why to do it, how to do it in a way that you can explain to others as well, you don't feel threatened at all. No one can threaten your own belief. Yeah. Which is why we are exploring the 5 precepts. We are taking so much time to explore the 5 precepts, so that when we hold the precepts, we know how to hold it well, as how the Buddha intended. I hope that makes sense. There's something else I want to respond to Sharon, which I totally forgot. It slipped my mind. Yeah.
Dharma Master,
Yeah, Sharon.
actually this sister is a very caring and very filial daughter, but she couldn't stand the fact that I'm eating vegetarian initially many years ago. She would try all kinds of ways to order food for me with some meat, thinking that I don't know. So in the end, when she saw that I was very insistent on the vegetarian food, then she has now respected the fact, and she will respect us vegetarian, so she's now more respectful. It's just that I was just sharing the fact that sometimes when we share the Dharma, and she is a very domineering person, and I think it is just because she doesn't like to be told what to do, that's all. But she's a very kind and caring sister. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good. Also, one of the, in response to you, Sharon, one of the interesting things about the Dharma, because it is based on wisdom, is that if you really understand the Dharma, you will be able to speak Dharma without speaking Dharma. So I'm not saying anything magical. I'm not talking about magical things. I'm not talking about conduct, where I mentioned earlier that it is through our virtue and conduct character that we transform people. But what I'm saying is that you are able to explain the principles of Dharma using language that other people understand. For example, the 5 precepts. And most of you have heard this because I've mentioned this many times. One way to look at the 5 precepts is a very strict way. Last time when I was a vegetarian going out with my friends and they asked me, I would say, oh, because you have to be compassionate to animals, so you don't kill, that's why I'm a vegetarian. You don't lie, and you go through the whole list thinking that, being pure and holy, not holy, being pure in your lifestyle, in your thoughts, is a good way to convert, to make people understand what you're doing. That didn't work at all. People would not, how you say, understand. They might tolerate, they might support, but they don't understand. But if you look at the precepts through a different lens, because we know the precepts, by now we know the precepts are the causes for future conditions as a human rebirth. So the precepts signify what it means to be a human being. And if we look at our relationships as humans, and we look at the precepts in terms of our relationships, meaning the people that we care for, do we want them to be always surrounded by people who will never harm them? Yes, of course. Do we want them to be surrounded by people who will never lie to them or cheat them or use harsh speech? Yes, of course. If we use that approach and we go through the five precepts, suddenly the five precepts make perfect sense. It is not me being pure for myself or for my rebirth. It is more than that. It is me showing how I care for the people that I care about, because that's how I want other people to treat them as well. And when you are able to explain it in a way like that, no one can, it's very hard for them not to understand where you're coming from. And if given enough time, then the only way they can be defiant is because they realize that it's also a mirror that reflects how they behave, and that makes them feel uncomfortable. And that's not the only way to explain the five precepts. I'm sure other people have better ways of explaining the five precepts that would make sense, not just to children but to adults, or the other way around, not just to adults but to children, because you can explain it to children is a lot more powerful than adults. To a pet lover, you would say that, I just want animals to feel comfortable around me. I really love animals. I love my pets. And in my mind, I don't think I can do anything bad, you know. So, because the worst thing that can happen is, you approach a puppy and the puppy is scared of you, and instinctively it makes us embarrassed if there are people around. I'm not sure how to explain it, but people who understand know what I'm saying. So right understanding, right view gives us different insights into how we hold our practice. And through that, then if we really understand what we're doing, we can explain it to people and it doesn't sound like the Dharma. We don't have to use Dharma words, we use human words that connect to human emotions and wholesomeness that totally makes sense, because that's what the Dharma is pushing us to do. So we're going to spend the next few classes looking at the five precepts from this perspective. And hopefully our understanding of the five precepts will become uh, really relevant in our own individual experiences. All right. Okay. So no time for story today, but for very, very good reasons. I hope people have more questions in the future. For now, let me end this slideshow and pull up the dedication of merit. Anyone else? Anything, comments, suggestions, ideas, questions? Okay, if not, let's dedicate merit. Anyone has any news of our friend, our Dharma friend, Sachal? Sachal, for those of you who don't know, is in Mumbai, and he and his wife Jaya unfortunately contracted the COVID virus, and both of them had to be hospitalized. I'm not sure about Jaya, but Sachal was in the ICU receiving oxygen and special treatment. And the last I heard a few days ago, he was getting better. Does anyone have any updates? No? Okay. All right. Let's dedicate merit. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward, May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, let's bow. 3 bows to the Buddha. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Venerable Master. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us this week. Hope next
Thank
week.
you, Dharma Master.
Oh,
Amitabha.
mention it. I hope next week we have more questions, because questions make the Dharma come alive. Okay. Bye bye, everyone. See you next week.